So, thank you, and I would like to call on stage Catherine, Suzanne, Boris, and I guess we will have Thomas Anne remotely showing on the screen if things are working. We hear your voice, Thomas, but we do not see your face. Ah, here he is. Okay, so this panel is de facto a follow-up of the panel which was previously yesterday chaired by Catherine and who was regrouping the various governments, the French one, the German one, and the European Commission. So I am happy to introduce this panel which will wrap up many things you heard in the last 2 days. You heard a lot about season 2 of Data Space. You heard a lot about vertical AI. You heard also about IPC AI. And I am very happy and proud that we have on the stage 4 members of the board of Gaia-X, and we will address together the following question. The first question will be why we need all that, and we will have in the first part industry explaining that through the answer of Catherine and Thomas. Then we will have a further definition of what is the content of this season 2 by Boris, and I have asked to Suzanne to tell us as BDI what are the success criteria for this season. It's important to understand how we want to be measured at the end. And the final, and it will not be very long because we have only half an hour, will be how covering the data governance of a European-born concept in a worldwide environment, and also, and this is data space, and also the way to organize for vertical AI, including IPC AI, presented by Ernst yesterday, and that question will be asked to all panelists. So I immediately hand over to Catherine. Why all that, Catherine?
So why do we need data spaces? First thing is that we have in front of us, and we are in a very easy and happy position because we have a backlog of aircraft to deliver in the next decade. So we have 8,000 aircraft to deliver to our customers, so we are in a very privileged situation. But it means that we need to accelerate the deliveries, and to be able to do that, we need more exchanges and more reactivity in the supply chain. We have a very complex supply chain with 6 levels. So when we make a decision in Airbus, it takes some time before it goes to the 6th level. And the data spaces are definitely a way that will accelerate our supply chain and our decision. We need also traceability. So between the raw materials, the part, and then the aircraft, we need to be able to trace all the equipment that have been installed, that have been removed over time, also during the life of the product. And if you don't have a data space, it's extremely complicated to get access to that information, to store that information, to be able to demonstrate to our regulators that we are doing the right thing for our customers. Then we need to prepare the next generation of aircraft. So we have a very successful product today with the A320. We have to replace it. It's a quite old product, and we are today working on the next generation. And to do that, we will have to federate the ecosystem. We will have to make work together on the design of the product, on the construction of the plants. We will have to federate more than 10,000 suppliers. Same thing, if you want to do that work and collaborate on the design of the product without a data space, extremely complicated story. And finally, I was mentioning the various big use cases where we need to exchange data. We need to do that in a compliant manner. And today, what is coming with when you build a data space that is compliant with Gaia-X principles, basically you are compliant by design. So you don't need to spend money, to spend energy to develop that compliance because it is coming with the product.
Thank you, Catherine. Same question to you, Thomas.
When you're thinking about, for example, when you're thinking about engineering process, where we are company with tools, controllers, and so on, to make calculation, networks, and then as you know. Then for the engineering process, you can save time, so-called industrial improvement of engineering for operation, for maintenance, or think about robotics, factory lines, where you pick up pieces, pieces to make the production more efficient, or thinking about also the operating as a service. For example, flexibility what Catherine mentioned. So if you do this, you need some kind of industrial AI. And for the industrial AI, you need industrial foundation models. That's not industrial, because you know, connected
Thank you, Thomas. So why we understand from two industrial why we need that. Let's now go to the what. Boris, please tell us.
Merci. Yes, indeed. For me, season 2 of Data Spaces is about two major things. The first one is to make sure that we make use of data spaces for AI, in particular vertical AI, as also laid out in the Draghi report, as we all probably know. And the second pillar of the season 2 of data spaces is to spur adoption of use of data spaces. In that sense, also increasing the sharing of the data for all of our benefits. And I'd like to elaborate a little bit on those 2 points. Also, when we first looked into the Draghi report, and it's rightly, argued that we would in Europe need to make better use of AI, in particular leverage the opportunities of vertical AI. I was asking myself, so what is that really? So what is vertical AI, or what are industry foundation models? And I don't want to bore you with too much of, let's say, this groundwork, but I think it's important to understand, because that also tells us what contribution this community here can do. So first of all, in the Draghi report, we were referring to, okay, let's make better use and push all the vertical foundation models that are out there. And at least at the time when the report was published, there weren't so many out there, right? So the first option is we could go and try to create one, basically train industry-specific foundation models. But what would happen? I mean, we know that, let's say, the data that we need for that is distributed, right? It's not in the hand and under control of individual actors, so therefore we need to get it together, right? And in that sense, if I was, let's say, a data provider, let's say an industrial company, I would be asked from a guy telling, oh, you know, I want to build and train a foundation model, please give me your data. I would ask, well, okay, I can understand your motivation, but what's in for me, right? What is my share of this asset that we jointly create, this model, right? How am I compensated? And that basically leads us to the point that we need a tool to make sure that we somehow can manage this, right? Control who's basically inputting what and what they will end up with in terms of a share. So this is number one. So let's assume, and there is also debate in the community whether that is needed or not, but let's assume we can take this pathway of training and vertical foundation model from scratch. By the way, I don't want to go too broad, but I heard just SAP just produced Rapid One, so a relational foundation model. That's quite interesting. But so this is the first thing. And for the first option to come up with vertical foundation models, we need a tool that we call data spaces. So the second thing would be, well, okay, let's not basically start all over from a blank sheet of paper, but let's use a general purpose large language model, for example, and try to fine-tune it. So basically provide it with a, let's say, industry-specific dialect, right? So, and that would mean that we would use industrial data to change the weighting factors in the model. So we would change the model through the injection of industry-specific data. But again, we will end up in the same question. If I was the company who would open up, let's say, the data resource, my data treasure, in order to fine-tune a general purpose model for whatever kind of usage in the future, I would at least make sure that this happens in a controlled way, and that I also have a means in my hand to control, well, what happens with, what is my share of the fine-tuned model. So and the third option that we have is that we basically use standard technologies like RAG. So we leave basically the LLMs as they are, and then basically ground an LLM in more, down-to-earth and factual and high-quality industrial data. And that is what usually happens around the place, which is pretty common. But again, here, I would like to know under which conditions I am able to use, and I want to basically share my data through a RAG technology in such a LLM. So in all three cases, and I'm sure there are many more, in all these three scenarios and cases, we end up with a demand for a tool which we call data space. And that is also why I was so happy to read, of course, for me it wasn't a surprise, but you never know, that let's say in the European Data Union strategy there is a very bold paragraph dealing, well, let's make use of data spaces for vertical AI, and that's pretty much around what I just tried to share with you. So we need that. However, and that also came across, and that now I come, and I don't want to spend too much time, sorry, but
another 2 minutes,
to the second. Thank you, Hubert, for always reminding me. For the second thing. So in the end, and I read that recently also in one of the LinkedIn blogs, and it's true, AI is only a technology. Let's make sure that we make use of data spaces for business purpose. And that means we need to come up into a stage, season 2, where we really focus on business viability, adoption, and impact. And I think, just very quickly, I think there are at least 3 points that we need to stress. The first thing is, that was mentioned by Joël Toledano earlier today. You have either, let's say, the highly scaling use cases or the ones that really create innovation, and that's why we share data, right? That is the reason. We don't share data because we have anything else to do, but we want to make a purpose. Then, what we see, this does not happen, let's say, automatically from a purely grassroots initiative. We need intermediaries the data sharing service providers to make that happen, to create some sort of critical mass in order to prime the pump, get the engine humming, whatever kind of English metaphor you want to use, to get that going. That is something that is really important. And for these kind of intermediary services, I think we would need, of course, also better understanding of business models, sustainable business models. Could be profit one, could be cost plus one, like an infrastructure service provider. Those are the things that we need to do. So, summarizing, and I see Hubert is watching me very closely. 2 things in season 2. First, make sure that we understand what it means to create industrial foundation models in such a shared environment which protects the individual interest and the community interest as we do it here. And second thing, please make sure altogether that we end up in from a business point of view, sustainable operations of data spaces. That's, I think, the what from my perspective.
Thank you, Boris. So now, time to you, Suzanne, to tell us how should we accept to be measured for checking that season 2 was a success.
Yeah, thank you, Hubert. Let me start with some numbers that refer to what the speakers earlier have said. We as Digital Association in Germany, we do a lot of surveys and research, and we ask companies on how they feel about these topics. And when we look at those numbers of recent surveys, then actually 58% of companies said that data spaces accelerate the adoption of AI. And as we have heard multiple times, we probably all agree that the use of AI is paramount if we want to keep be compatible in the global competition, especially in the industry fields where we are traditionally strong. So, but at the same time, 49% of companies say that B2B data sharing does not yet contribute to their business success. So, and when we look at the numbers on who is actually sharing data or buying data, then we have a good percentage of companies already buying data, but only like 16% actually saying they are a data provider. I think this shows that we really have to learn from the experiences we have made with building data spaces. We need them, but we must make them or build them in a way and coordinate and orchestrate them in a way that they are really economically viable, and that they are obviously a means and a tool for small and medium-sized companies, because this is what we talk about in the majority of companies, so that they are able to use them and with not too much cost, not too much resources, not too much effort. What does that mean? I think we should concentrate on some KPIs for the data spaces we build in order to produce a business model for those for their own running, but also an easily to understand model of usage for small and medium-sized companies, so that we really build this ecosystem that we need to be successful builders and users of industrial AI models. And I also think that we really need to orchestrate that closely with the big projects. You named the IPCEI projects. When we do that on AI and we build big, do the groundwork together in these big funded projects, we must make sure that there's also the data out there for a great majority of companies to be able to use it.
Suzanne, thank you very much. You have been very short and very precise on your answer. Let's go now to the last part of this panel, the how. Obviously, we will simply open the box because the how will be the discussion in the next few weeks and months, and it is not something we can sort out in 2 minutes. Catherine, what will be your recommendation for the how?
I just need to turn it on. I think for me there are two things, and I think Boris has already said it. If we want to develop vertical AI, and you said it also, Suzanne, and if we want to stay competitive in the future, we need vertical AI. To do vertical AI, we need data spaces. So for me, it's not the two are not exclusive from one from each other. We need both. We need to continue the effort on building and accelerating the deployment of the data spaces. We have already a lot. Ulrich mentioned it. We have already 170-ish data spaces existing. We need them to really go to operations and enter into operations. And that's the intent we have for the Gaia-X, for example. We will go live with the first version in the first half, at the end of the first half of 26, sorry. So we need to continue that effort, and now we need, yes, to think about, okay, what's next? So that's the season 2, and that's where we will build this vertical AI, and we need to answer all the questions Boris was mentioning. I'm not ready to share my data for free if I don't get any benefits of it. And I think that everybody in this room will have the same conclusion. So we need to be in a position where we can explain to our ecosystems why they should share their data, why they should accept their data to be used in the training of the models. And what will be the benefit for them. So that's, for me, we will be successful for this. And the second point where I also want to insist, because it's core for the Gaia-X and for our structure, if we don't embark the small and medium organization, we will fail. For me, I will consider it a failure if I'm not able to onboard the small and medium organization. Again, in an aircraft, 80% of the value of an aircraft is not created by Airbus, but by our supply chain, including very small organizations. So we need to have them on board to make it a success. Otherwise, I will consider it a failure for us.
Thank you, Catherine. Thomas, your view on that?
Yeah, I said before, I talked about topics and related to quality aspects and so on. But the second issue,
Thank you, Thomas. Boris, the same question.
Yeah. First of all, before I come to my ideas with regard to the how, let me share one other fact that I found very, very promising. Is, as you might know, in the Data Spaces Support Center, where we are, many of us are involved, we established the so-called Data Spaces Award, and the deadline for submission was, I believe, a week ago, right? Friday last week. And we got more than 60 applications. And that was really, really great, because we're explicitly asking for stuff that's already working, so that's a cool thing. So we could, and I'm sharing that because it's really a cool thing. It basically is promising. So on the other hand, we could say, okay, everything runs well, right? But I think there are two things that require us to rethink how we move ahead, and that brings me to the how. The first thing is we are moving forward but too slow. And the other thing is the footprint in the value chains. If we move ahead like this, we will never reach, let's say, the footprint that we need. So what can we do? In my point of view, we need to establish more effective collective governance mechanisms to make sure that users can rely on certain things, and that we more strictly and rigorously agree on the common things that we want to use. And I want you to note that I did not say central governance, but collective and shared governance. That is our strength, I believe, but we must come up with something that is more binding, because that would give us speed, and that also would make sure that gives, let's say, security and, let's say, trust for the, let's say, adopters in the long tail, that they can invest in what we do, because otherwise they will not do that if it's, let's say, too complicated and too fuzzy. I think, and Hubert, you mentioned that, and I see Ernst also sitting here in the second row, I think the IPSE AI is a good opportunity for that, to somehow leverage this initiative to provide ourselves with a more effective, once more, collective governance regime. Thanks.
Thank you. Suzanne, you are the last on this topic.
Yeah, I think a lot of the necessary steps have already been named, and I'd like to add maybe what we if we want to make this a success throughout the economy and have the SMEs take part in it. I also want to go back to some numbers. The three mostly named reasons why companies don't share data is, first, because they fear it's not legal under data protection law. Second, they're not sure, they're legally insecure whether they are allowed to share it. And the third is they are afraid that they might accidentally give out secrets of their own business. So I think we need to find answers to that too. And that's after having, I think, we have solved a lot of the technical problems, but we are working on the business solutions that work for all the participants. I think it's important that big companies who know exactly what they want data for and what they need it for go in the front and maybe push the whole ecosystem. But at the same time, we have to address the issues that the small companies have, and we also, on the business side, that also comprises how do we deal with the legal questions that they have, how do we support that with model contract standards, etc. And we really have to communicate efficiently, and I hope we find a way to establish such a cooperating scheme that allows us to align very quickly while different data spaces and ecosystems are in parallel working on building something. And at the same time, we want these verticals to be interoperable and to be able to interact with each other, because that's a whole new dimension of wealth in data that we can use. And so yeah, I think it's a holistic view that I would like to see.
Thank you, Suzanne. I have 45 seconds to conclude by saying the following. I guess after these 2 days, the why is almost understood and agreed by everyone. The what We have still progress to do, but I believe we begin to understand what the what will be. Now, the biggest problem we have in front of us to be sorted out, I would say, in the next 3 to 4 months is the how. We have many opportunities which are in front of us. Making together a common how is what is our